Hello, Tile friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Tile Money Podcast, where I, Luke Miller, discuss the business of tile installation. Today, I've got my first repeat guest, Steve Rausch. How are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing great, Luke. How about you this morning?
Doing really good. Doing really good. Thank you for joining me again on this podcast. I had a lot of great feedback from our last episode, so I'm looking forward to this one.
Well, I am too, and you and I have had some discussions. I think we're going to rein this one down on time and just hit some very specific steps. So we'll see if this improves a little bit, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sounds good to me. And today's title is about the New Year's resolution. As we come up here on the end of the year, a lot of us are thinking about our different resolutions, and we might have some goals. You know, I'd like to grow some hair on the top of my head.
Or not.
So we might have some personal goals and stuff, but we should really have business goals. So that's what today's topic's all about. So why don't you get us started, Steve, and I'll let you take us away.
I want to say, I think this may be the single most important thing you can do right now, the single most important thing you can do to make sure that next year you have a better year.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned personal resolutions. I think personal and business kind of need to mesh. You
That's
need to
true.
be consistent across all your life. And I'm going to give you some specific examples, but I want to start with the question of what keeps you awake at night. And, you know, anybody that's owned a business, small or large, has something that keeps them awake at night. And, you know, when I had my retail stores, there were nights I stayed awake thinking about my vendor relationships. And should I change from one vendor to another? They were offering me things, you know, taking this to the contractor level. Should I use one setting material or the other setting material? What should I be doing? You got to put some time in on that, but that's what keeps you awake at night. Sometimes it's making payroll.
Right.
You know, you and I discussed last time, there's times I took my American Express card and zinged off $20,000 to make payroll the next day, knowing that I had cash coming in on the weekend. So you got to think about those things. Whatever it is that keeps you awake at night, whatever that is, that's got to be your first and foremost thing for the goals for next year. And goal setting is simply, New Year's resolutions is simply goal setting or planning. That's all it is.
Right.
And the most valuable thing you can do is start with a blank piece of paper and a pencil. And, you know, before I set goals, I probably have 5 or 6 written pages of notes of things I want to do.
Yeah.
So let's jump in on this.
And this thought of writing our words down, our goals down, is so important. I can't articulate it probably maybe as well as you, but from what I understand, when we put pen to paper, and even, you know, I do something. I wrote myself a letter that was dated March 1st, 2019. So in other words, approximately 3 months in advance. And under that letter, I started writing all the goals I had accomplished in that first 3 months of 2019. These were goals I want to work on. So in other words, my brain is now accepting that I'm going to hit these goals. I'm going to hit these marks.
Right.
And when we put that pen to paper and we visually read it, I read it daily, you know, when I remember, but multiple times a week for sure I'm reading that. It's telling my brain, this is what I'm doing. This has already happened, because I read that date on the very top.
Right.
Have you heard that, Steve?
I have heard that before, and I'll tell you what that ties into. And this is the beauty of all these podcasts of Tile Money. Somebody needs to go back and listen to these, and I don't listen to them without my pencil and paper. I just don't, okay? So some people like a spiral-bound notebook.
Yeah.
I can do it either way. I have 3 or 4 of these. I have these. But but just like I heard the one the other day with Ron Nash from Laticrete, okay? And Ron made a statement when we were talking about pricing, and I thought to myself, I need to write that down because that was so important. Might have been the most important thing he said, which is, does your town have a luxury car dealer? And if people are buying Mercedes, Porsche, BMWs, Lamborghinis, whatever it is, then by golly, they'll pay you more for tile.
Yeah.
You go to the auto repair shop for those things, and you're going to talk about a $500 oil change, okay? That's opposed to $19.95 at Jiffy Lube. So it's the same thing in the tile business. You write those goals down, you put them in paper. But before we do that, I want to give you a principle, and I want you to write the principle down because I think this is probably as important or more important than anything else that we're going to discuss. And that principle is your decisions will shape your destiny. Your decisions will shape your destiny. The future is only what you choose to make of it. So every day, your little decisions will either take you more to the life you want or to additional disasters by default. That ties into your letter, ties into my next statement. I'm a pilot. I fly for fun. I don't fly for an airline. I fly for fun. But when I take off to fly somewhere, I have to be completely focused. I have to do some pre-planning and flight planning, and I know what heading I'm going to fly. And if I take off from my local airport going to another airport, let's say from Atlanta to Charleston, South Carolina, which is a nice, easy hour flight for me. If I'm off by a half a degree when I take off, if I don't watch that and have it on my notes that I have to fly a certain heading, and if I'm off by a half a degree, in that 365 miles, same as 365 days, I'm going to be a half a state away from my destination. Because I'm going to continually go off course instead of going on the course I want.
Yeah.
So that's why a tiny, inconsequential decision today, I'm not going to make this plan. I'm just going to wing it. I've been winging it for 3 years. I'm not happy, but I'm going to wing it again. Well, that's just stupidity. The second part of this is the payoff. And there's a secret to the payoff, and that is a simple, one single word, consistency. And you just said it, Luke. You look at that paper every single week, multiple days during the week. You focus on that. You think about that. You are consistently going that direction and that way, and that's what you need to be doing. So every day, plan your work consistently and work that every day, every week, every month, unless you don't see progress. And if you don't see progress, then you just stop right then. You examine what you've been doing. You reevaluate it. You modify it if you need to, because sometimes we need to modify things. Things unexpected have happened.
Yeah.
And then you start over with consistency again. So I'm going to give you a formula for a New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
Now, it's worked for me for over 50 years. That formula is real simple. Smart, small goals plus consistency plus time gives you a radical difference. Smart, small goals plus consistency plus time give you a radical difference.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I really like where we're headed here. And when you were talking about the airplane, the pilot, that I understand that, analogy, and I understand it because even on a smaller scale, and even maybe I can use a tile analogy, we used to chalk lines and do full house, tile installations. When we do that, typically we chalk lines. Some of the new school guys might not understand that. But if you're off, if you 3, 4, 5 your layout, and you're off even a 32nd or a 16th in a 20-foot, 30-foot, 40-foot run, guess what's going to happen? If you're having multiple setters try to line up in 2 different rooms, you're going to be off 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. So it adds
20
up.
years ago, I tried to do an installation myself in front of a room full of installers. And while I was trying to do that installation, I had chalked my line and I knew I was getting off.
Yeah.
I knew I was getting off. And I know this is going to be a disaster. And there was an installer sitting in the front row of this clinic, and you could tell he'd been setting tile a long time.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, now, I'm doing something here and I see it's wrong. Tell me what it is. And this old boy says, you're not on your truck line. You're off that truck line. Let me show you how to correct that. And he got up and he took over and started doing it. And from then on, when I did a clinic, I had a professional installer doing the setting while I was explaining what was going on.
Right.
Because my mechanical skills aren't as good as my thinking skills. All right. So I want to give you, before we actually start, and all, by the way, we've started. All this is part of it.
Yeah.
But I want to give you 4 overarching goals. These are very big goals that I want you to consider, but I want them to be specific.
Okay.
I want you to set a goal for intellectual growth. Set a goal for health growth, for your health. Set a goal for your relationship growth. And set a goal for your business growth. Now, this is where I said earlier, we're going to tie these in, Luke, to personal versus business are all going to be consistent. So you don't have to live one life at work and one life at home.
Right.
Okay. So your intellectual growth is real simple. Don't stop learning. Listen or read something regularly. I try to read every day. I try to read something and grow a little bit every day. Some people don't have that time or that luxury, and they want to do it every other day or a couple of days a week, whatever. But set an intellectual growth goal for yourself and read books. The ideas that I'm expressing didn't come from me. They're gleaned from many, many publications, books, and even small groups that talk about this stuff.
True.
Next one is your physical health. Now, you're out setting tile today and every day. So the strength part of it, you don't need to go to the doggone gym and work, okay? A fat boy like me, sitting in a car or an airplane all day, I have to set a goal to go to the gym and work because I'm not out physically doing that. But think about this. What else, if your body goes, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
If my body goes, I'm done.
Right.
So what else matters? How do I improve your health? Is it eating better? Is it eating less? Is it getting more rest at night? Is it getting up earlier? Sometimes your health can be get up earlier to get things done before the day goes crazy.
Yeah.
And then go to bed earlier at night.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of goals you got to think about. That's your health goal. A little different than most people think about going to the gym. And most tile installers that I've met said, I don't need a health goal because I'm physically active. Yeah, but I watch them sit there and they don't eat lunch or they eat junk food for lunch. That's not going to keep them healthy and going. Now, the relationship goal. This is critical. The relationship is 2 parts, strengthening your current relationships and building new relationships. Current relationships may be your spouse, it may be your children, it may just be your other family, but you got to strengthen and put some time into those relationships. I know installers who can't keep up with a marriage because they put all their time into work, and the bottom line is that's not healthy for them.
Yeah. I would say, if you don't, I know everybody understands that, if you lose your family, what's going to happen to your business? You're going to lose your business. So what's first and foremost? Well, your family. I mean, that's why we work anyways. You lose your family, you basically lost your.
Well, you and I both read all the internet social media groups, the chat groups, and every week we read about somebody who's doing jobs on Saturday, doing jobs on Sunday. They've been 3 weeks without a day off.
Yeah.
that's just not good. That's not good at all. You've got to rest. You've got to have some time to be with your family. Also, what new relationships? Maybe if you decide, and we're going to talk about your business growth next, but if you decide in your business growth that you need to pick up a builder and do builder business, you need to start looking at a relationship with a builder, with somebody involved in that building business, that industry.
Definitely.
I heard somebody discussing the other day, BNI, Business Networks International. You know, when I had my retail stores, I had 3 stores in Atlanta. I spent every week, I spent one morning a week in 3 different BNI groups that were in different areas. Okay. And that relationship got us a lot of work. Then I found out I was in the carpet, hardwood, ceramic, vinyl, the full service flooring store. I found out that I was missing a huge opportunity when I joined a buying group called Abbey Carpets, and they started talking to me about carpet cleaning. Here I've got all these customers and I'm sending them off to somebody else to do carpet cleaning. So I spent a little bit of money. At that time, it was about $20,000 to buy a cleaning truck, send my technician to school, learn the business, and then do carpet cleaning, which tied into my carpet sales.
Yeah.
But you hire the right person. While my technician was there doing cleaning, he'd say, Mrs. Consumer, are you happy with the way your kitchen looks? Because we do ceramic tile, you know, and we can make that kitchen beautiful. I've been wanting a ceramic tile floor in there for years. Boom, boom, boom. So it all tied together. That came from sitting down in December one year and making a conscious decision to focus on expanding my business that next year and working with Abbey Carpets to do it. So the 4th goal is the business growth, and that's really easy. Are you wanting to expand your business? If so, do this New Year's resolution program and sit there and do that and think about it, spend some time on it. By the way, it can be something totally different than expanding it. It can be maybe going for higher quality work and not doing as much of it, you know?
Right.
There's an installer in Florida, in Tampa, Florida, named Frank Canto. He's been around for years, was the president of the National Tile Contractors Association probably 10 or 12 years ago. Canto does high-end work. It's not unusual for him to have his entire crew on one mansion on Tampa Bay for 4 months doing tile work.
Wow.
But we're talking about big business here. We're talking about big bucks. He pays his company based on that for 4 months, okay?
Right.
Maybe you want to consider shutting down and going to work for somebody else. Maybe you've just had it, and this is the time you think about that and you plan about that. And again, Ben Franklin said, make the list, put the positives, the negatives, and figure it out. Maybe when you do that, you say, wait a minute, I'm in such a position, I'm at a tipping point, and I can quit and go to work for somebody else, or I can put in 10% change and make it happen better, and I'll stay in business for myself. What do I want? That's when you get back to filling in those blanks, okay? So that's your 4 big goals. Now, you take those and you put them into the specific steps or schedules, if you will. When you fill in the blanks, I always say, Luke, don't have more than 3 to 5 big things to work on. You might have more steps than 3 to 5,
Sure.
but 3 to 5 big things, and keep it simple. Keep it obtainable and simple. You know, don't make a step, I'm going to earn $100,000 more next year. Make it, I'm going to earn, you got 50 weeks to do it, right?
Right.
You're going to take 2 weeks vacation. So I'm going to earn $2,000 a week more. That's different than saying I'm going to earn $100,000 a year more. Make it simple, make it easy. But then track your daily actions. If you have to keep up with a little notebook in your pocket and keep up with, I'm going to work no more than 6 to 8 hours every day, and I'm going to produce this much money during that time. And you start tracking down your day, and you find out you're standing at the tile distributor, or maybe you're going to the Home Depot or the big box to buy your tile and your setting materials, and you're standing there for an hour and a half in the morning. You know what? That's a cost. An hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of your day, that's 25% of your day. As opposed to going to the local distributor, they've already got it palletized, sitting there. You pull up, they run the forklift, they stick it in the back of your truck, and you're gone in 15 minutes. And you've just made 25% of your day back.
Yeah.
Those are the sort of things you have to think about and consider specific steps to make your New Year's goals. Sometimes you have to think about what you're going to stop or eliminate. And again, that maybe going to the big box store is the way to do it for you. Maybe it's not. But think about what you may want to eliminate and change and do differently. Again, I talk about feeding your mind. When you're doing this stuff, when you're driving to the job, you're in California, I'm in Atlanta. We face some of the same problems. A drive to go 20 miles in the morning in rush hour traffic is at least 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I can listen to your podcast for 30 or 45 minutes and enrich my mind and pick it up. The other thing I want you to do to feed your mind specifically is find what I call a peak performance partner. A peak performance partner is somebody that you can meet with, maybe in the same business, maybe not, but somebody that's already made it, if you will, somebody that's a little more professional.
Okay.
I met yesterday afternoon with my peak performance partner for my 401k investments. And I sat and talked to him about what I'm doing on my investments, and he made specific suggestions to me about how I should change that. So those types of things are important, especially in your business, okay?
So I'll wrap myself out here. I've been, wanting to implement a peak performance partner in my business life and my personal life for a long time, and I have not because I'm too busy, right? So I need to, so maybe you can just give me a tip on how I can do this and make sure I do this. I'm going to write this, into my sub goal. In other words, one of my main goals for next year is to improve on sales. So my sub goal will be find a peak performance partner in sales. And I like what you said about finding someone who's already made it. Now there's a realtor that is the top realtor in my area. He's made it. He's a salesman. I'm going to reach out to him first and try hard to get on his radar and say, hey, would you mind taking, now could this be a phone call, Steve, or does it have to be in person?
It absolutely can be anything that works for you.
Okay.
I like in person. I'm an in-person guy, but you and I are getting a relationship over the internet. So come on, that's what consulting is about. Okay. True. I consult with a business. I have a manufacturer, and I can't tell you specifics. I can't tell you who I work for. That's the sad part. But I have specific manufacturers that call me up and say, I need to bounce some ideas off of you. And they know it'll be in complete confidence that I'll give them the best possible answer from my perspective. And I won't be offended if they don't take my idea, but I'll question why they don't take it, and maybe I'll learn something. That's what your mentor or your business peak partner benefits in this, okay?
Okay.
So maybe the realtor says, look, I don't do anything before 9 o'clock in the morning. Nobody does it. How about we meet at 7 o'clock at the local restaurant? In Atlanta, that's either a Waffle House or a Cracker Barrel. And you meet and have breakfast and talk about things, maybe one day a week.
Okay.
Maybe you don't meet every week. Maybe you meet one week, you talk on the phone one week, maybe you email back and forth. But the more personal it is, the better. I like it. That's what works for me. One of the guys that was one of the best mentors to me in the tile business was Bob Daniels, who was the executive director of the Tile Council of North America. And when he retired from the Tile Council, he had time on his hands. He was somewhat bored. Eric Astrachan took over the Tile Council and was doing a great job. Now he's running like crazy, going 100 miles an hour. And Bob and I had time every week to talk. It was a long distance relationship. We did it via phone, but we talked every week. And sometimes it was while I was driving to somewhere, I would call Bob and say, okay, I'm going in to see such and such a distributor. What do you think about this? How about that? And he would give me an idea, plant a seed, and man, it could really bloom. So that can be, it could be another contractor who's successful, but like you say, a realtor. I don't like bankers because bankers and attorneys are thinking in protection and limiting terms. And I can, maybe I need that, maybe I need that, but most of the time I want more expansion type things.
Okay.
So you write these things out and you include those things and maybe have a target list. Maybe the realtor's target number 1 and the hardware store owner is target number 2 and somebody else is target number 3.
That way I don't give up. Yeah.
Business, I'll tell you, BNI, when I was in BNI, I found a lot of guys that I used as peak performance partners.
Okay.
And, I had a CPA actually that I was with one CPA and I went to this, I finally changed over to this other CPA because of it. But he was giving me advice when we had breakfast at the breakfast meetings at the BNI. He was giving me advice about certain things that made a lot of sense for me. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of more things and then I'm going to give you my example for my personal, I've already been working on mine. I moved my time frame back.
Okay.
So I've got a written out business and I've got a written out life purpose statement. The purpose of my business, the purpose of my life, those main goals. Why does my business exist? And what do I want to have it exist as a personal thing? One of the things I want to do is, after learning things all these years, I want to share them with people. That's a personal goal of mine. So I write those specific 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4 important things, and then I start putting the steps down in writing that I want to accomplish. And I'll do a written draft. I always meet with my peak performance partner at that point to discuss that written draft. And I've had him say to me, "You didn't think this through very well. Were you drunk when you wrote this? What the?" And I've had other people say, "That's really out of the box." And I like it. It's so far out of the box. I think it's going to be great. I like it. And so those are the things. So my personal example, unless you got questions, I'm going to move right into the personal example.
Yeah, let's keep moving. I like it. It's making sense.
So my personal example, I have multiple areas or roles in my life. The ones I chose have been husband, father, church, family member, friend, and neighbor, all 3 together.
Okay.
My work, my personal development of self, my physical, and my financial. Now I've been doing it a long time. That's a lot of goals. And I almost have a spreadsheet type thing that I keep up with them.
Okay.
But I keep up with those on paper every single day. Okay. So in my example, my work is my business consultant. That's my title, business consultant. So now what do I want to do? I'm just going to talk about that. I'm not going to preach about my family and about my church and about my neighborhood relationship. I'm talking about just my work goal on this point right now.
Okay.
What do I want to do? What are my areas that I want to do? I've got 4 goals that I want to track. I want to study, know, and grow my industry relationships. That's what keeps me up at night. How do I get new business and how do I retain business? And so it's through relationships. So that one, in my case, jumps to the top. It wouldn't be the same necessarily for a tile setter, but it might be for you in tilemoney.com because you need to bring people in to talk on the podcast.
True.
So I need to know and grow industry relationships. Number two, I need to develop and provide training to people. That's critical in what I want to do. Develop and provide training. Number three, I want to develop and investigate new business opportunities. When I got into consulting, somebody told me, if you think of the Pacific Northwest in the old days, they used to roll logs down a river. And to be a log jack, you had to roll the log. But once you got it going to a certain speed, you had to be looking at the next log to jump to, or you're going to go in the drink. So you're constantly getting the log moving, getting it rolling, and then looking at the next one that you got to jump to. And the fourth thing that I do is I track and follow industry quality and building code standards. I'm real involved in the codes, both for building codes, but in the industry standard codes.
Right.
National Tile Contractors Association on writing the handbook, all of the different things. I was the chairman of the Tile Council Backer Board Committee for over 10 years. Those things were important to me, and I like them. I enjoy taking a technical engineering talk statement and making it sensible that the installer can say, what the hell are they talking about? Oh, they're talking about you got to lay your tile this way, and this is what you want to do. But most importantly, this is why you want to do it. This is how. I don't have the physical skills to stay on the chalk line, but I know why it's critical to stay on the chalk line, why you use a laser line maybe instead of a chalk line sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. So those things. So let's go back to each of those goals. My study, know, and grow industry relationships. That goal has 3 steps below it.
Yep.
Follow and know the segment volume, because I have to know the different segments of the tile industry, the market and opportunity volume, and the channels of distribution. That could be big box, it could be distributors, it could be people like Floor and Decor that have just come into the market. So I got to keep up with those things. I need to know, for me, I need to know and track competitive pricing. My specialty is backer boards. I want to be able to say, if I'm talking to a manufacturer, you're going to see this price, generally speaking, you're going to see this price in South Florida, this price in New York, this price in California, this price in the Midwest. Maybe it's overarching, but that's going to give them a general idea. I also need to have relationships with the major distributors and with contractors around North America, so that if I need to know, gee, what's the price on Latacrete board today, their foam board, I can call Luke in California and get an idea from Luke. He's priced it, he knows. I can call Buck Collins in Washington, D.C. I can call in New York. I can call in Florida. I can call in Texas. I can call in Chicago, and I get those prices. So to me, that's critical. Now, step 2, develop and provide training. I have to be able to do training for both business and administration. So I go to a distributor, let's say, and I may have to train their customer service department what that looks like. You know, they're on the phone most of the time taking orders. They're not facing you, the installer. That's a different set of skills. But the counter guy that's facing you, the installer, has got to have a set of skills that are a little different. So I have to work that out and work those trainings so that I help bring value to that company if it's a distributor. Also, field marketing and field sales training. When you talk about interviewing the VD sales rep, somebody's got to train that sales rep. And if you work with VD, you help them maybe at the big level over understanding how they want to train, what they want to train for, or maybe it's actually training those sales reps. Mm-hmm. One of the best things I did when I worked for Georgia Pacific was we were making Den Shield tile backer board. Mm-hmm. And we developed a program called DENS 101. and we brought our field reps in and had them trained on how to sell Den Shield tile backer one-on-one.
Okay.
By the way, I didn't do the training. I developed the training. I brought in a tile contractor, happened to be named Tony Sherman here in Atlanta. And Tony became, for about 5 years, the face of Den Shield.
Okay.
He trained all of our sales reps. Then they would fly him around the country. When they opened up distributors, they'd bring Tony in and he'd do the training for other contractors. And you know yourself, the fat boy sitting there on the stage in a nice dress shirt telling you what to do is one thing, but the contractor who's been there on his knees beside you telling you what to do has a different level.
Right.
That was probably the most successful training we ever had, but it's not easy to pull off unless you do this planning work and then propose it and set it out and say, it's going to work, here's how we do it. I also do technical rep and installation trainings. So part of when we were at National Tile Contractors was when we started this traveling road show, and we had one guy travel around. Actually, it started with Joe Tarver, the executive director, traveling around in a motorhome doing clinics with volunteers. And that proved to be good, but not great. Then we went to a traveling specialist, and they traveled around, and we proved that you could burn a guy out on traveling in about 50 weeks because he was in a different state almost every day for 50 weeks. Wow. And then we went to the concept of 2 and 3 travelings and trainings like you've got now. So that's it. The next one is pretty well two steps. Develop and investigate new business opportunities. There's nothing but 2 steps. 1, what are the new products that we can see that make sense? Number 2, what about existing products? How can we expand the use of that?
Okay.
And that's an important one for me because I work with manufacturers who maybe have a product that's starting to lose its luster, and we have to figure out, and how do you do that? This is where your goals tie together. You go back to my relationship goals. Number 1, most important thing I do, and you call up Luke and you say, Luke, I'm working on this with a manufacturer and he's got this product and this idea. What would this make a difference? What would you tell him if you had his ear? What would you tell him to do to change his setting material? And you would say, I want that setting material to be more open time. It dries out too quick. I use it, but I want it to be more open. Perfect. I'll get that message to him. And that's how you tweak it and do that. And then, of course, the last area, the quality and building code standards. And that's an ongoing thing. You have to make the meetings. If you have insomnia, just tape record the meetings and listen to them the next night, and you'll go right to sleep.
There you go.
So I want to bring this down now and close it out. What are the vital functions to my business, whether it's tile installer, tile dealer, tile distributor, tile manufacturer? What are the vital functions to my business? Again, no more than 5 vital functions. And you're going to do and focus on them every day. Plus, how many hats do I have to wear? Okay, what roles do I have to have in my business? Whether that's prospecting for new business, that's a different role than going out and setting the tile. Negotiating a contract or opening up a new account with, say, a builder, a different skill, a different role. Boy, the big one, managing the daily business and following up with your existing account. You know, that's almost that's almost a full-time job that the tile installer can't do in addition to do his tile installer job.
Correct.
And then, of course, the administration of the business and financial details. Some people use their spouses for that. One of the most successful companies I know, the sister does it.
Okay.
The guy that's the head guy, his sister does it for him. And that's great. A guy Frank Canto's age has his daughter do it.
Okay.
So be creative. Maybe it's your next door neighbor. Maybe you get along well with your next door neighbor and it works that they're a business person and you've got just enough to give them evening work, which they want and need.
Yeah.
Those things.
And we can use our already existing relationships. You know, if we're thinking, well, I don't know, you know, I don't have the budget for a professional or whatever. I mean, we might know a professional who wants a little side work.
Right.
Like you're saying.
Right. Right. So that's that one. The next one, what are the vital priorities in my business? What's my daily priorities, my to-do, my task, my key projects? You can, again, when you're brainstorming, write down every one that comes to your mind and then prioritize them and put the top one most important, top two most important, top three most important. Let the others go away because they're going to distract you.
Mm-hmm.
In my program here that I'm talking about, in my life as a business consultant, my number one thing, as I said earlier, everything else works off of study, know, and grow my industry relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the number one thing for me, and that's what everything else grows about.
Yeah.
If you ask me what can flow from this center point, I've got to tell you that doing things like what we're doing today can flow from this center point. If I have 3 to 5 contractors call me or send me an email and say, what about this? What about this? I'm going to learn from them, and I might be able to help teach them something too. So that's why you do those things. That's the most important thing for me. Okay?
Interesting. Yeah.
So just remember that you've got to manage your activity. And what I mean by that is you've got to rank things on importance and on urgency. Importance right now is doing this podcast. Urgent was the cell phone call that came in while I was on the phone. I just hit the button and said, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back. That's how I deal with my urgent items that aren't important. Now, if that was the hospital calling to tell me my wife had been in a car accident, the podcast would become important, but not urgent. That would become urgent and important. So you got to balance that urgency and importance factors.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Stephen Covey in The Habits of Highly Successful People talks about that. If you read that book, which is 20 years old, but the principles are still good, and it's on audiobook so you can listen to it, he's got the urgent and the important in a quadrant. And what you want to do is get yourself out of responding to urgent but not important, and only do important items, eliminating urgent items. That's emergencies. You try to eliminate those. You try to plan everything and do the most important work, and that's how it comes out.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for breaking that down. Yeah. So really, to sum it up, you know, we're talking about smart consistency, smart goals. Consistency plus time equals a radical difference. I really like that little saying there. So we talked about studying and knowing and growing your industry relationships. Now, for tile contractors, this could be other business people, like we talked about BNI networking. It should be your reps. It should be anybody who's in the industry, correct?
Absolutely. And again, if it doesn't do you any good to have relationships with 5 home builders if you don't want home builder business.
Right.
But if you want high-end home builder business, you need to figure out who's building the type of homes you want and have that relationship start to grow. And networking, who knows that person?
Yeah.
You know, who knows that person? When I had my store, one of my best builder leads came from a pastor at my church. And I did some work in the pastor. I did it for the church. You know, they owned his house, and so he had a furnished house. And we did some work in his house, and he was happy. And I was talking to him and networking with him a little bit. And I said, you know, what I'm really trying to do next year is get into doing more builder work. Oh, you know, so-and-so that sits out in the 4th pew in the third row. Yeah, I don't know anything about him, but I know he's out there. Yeah, well, that's his name. His name is Jim, and Jim is one of the biggest builders in the area. But he builds real high-end houses. He only builds about 3 or 4 a year. Wow, that'd be great to get started with. Yeah, why don't you and I have coffee with Jim? Let me call him and see. Bing, bing, bing. Hey, Jim, I got somebody I think you need to meet. You have time to have coffee tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock? Jim said, I happen to do that. I'm not pouring foundations until 9, so I'll have my foreman do that, and I'll meet you for coffee. We had coffee. Next thing you know, I got thrown a couple of small jobs that Jim had to have things done. You know what it's like. He didn't give me the big work first. He threw me a couple of little tiny bait fish, and I didn't screw them up. And next thing you know, I was doing Jim's work.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's kind of work.
Yep, those relationships are key. And friends, remember, when we're setting our goals, keep them simple and attainable. We want to break them down to smaller goals under the larger goals. So no more than 5 large goals. Under that, we might have 2, 3, 4, 5 small attainable goals that you could reach within weeks or months.
Right. Yeah. I would tell you, if you've never done this process, I would go with 3.
Okay.
And you know what? At the end of 6 months, God love you. You hit all 3. You exceeded them. That meant you were aiming way too low, but that's okay. You understand the process. Now write 3 more that are going to take you from here to here.
Okay.
And go for those 3. And at the end of 7 months or 8 months, you've hit those. Now you can start going more. The only reason I would go to 5 goals is I would include those other areas of my life. You know, in whether it's being a father or a parent or a husband or a friend, or my church goals.
Yeah.
You know. And again, I keep the relationships goal. That's my number 1 goal. So when I talk about doing something for my church, I try to do something in the relationship area that I get to meet more people. Maybe it's the usher at the church greeting people at the door.
Yeah.
And I find out that Luke comes there every Sunday, but nobody really knows him. And come to find out, Luke's a tile installer. And I can make some relationship work there that I can help Luke and Luke can help me.
Yeah.
That's
makes
the
sense.
key. It's got to be a win-win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed another episode of the Tile Money Podcast, friends. Steve, where can people find you?
Well, first of all, you can find me real easy by my cell phone, which goes off pretty continuously. 404-281-2218. 404-281-2218. The other thing that you can find me is on email, and I do text if you want to send me a text to that cell phone number. Then I also use my email, which is real difficult. Rausch Steve, that's RAUSCHSTEVE 55@gmail.com. Rausch Steve 55@gmail.com. That helps you remember 5 goals maximum.
That's a good one.
You got to have a memory hook, you know.
Yeah.
You got, whether it's your
it.
Your head or your heart or your relationship, you got to have a memory hook.
Yeah, I like it.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out. And friends, for all of you on receiving my newsletter, I have some beautiful notes here of this whole discussion. I'm going to make sure to forward those to your email inbox. If you're not don't know what I'm talking about, you can go to tilemoney.com and click on the subscribe link, and you'll be subscribed to my emails that I'll be sending out, show notes, so to speak, of all these episodes.
And I'll send you the revised copy of my notes that we just worked off of, so you'll have those notes also.
I appreciate that. You make it easy for me, Steve.
All right.
I look forward to implementing some of this stuff in my personal life and business life, and it's all going to interlock together. So I'm looking forward to it. I know the friends listening are going to benefit from this as well.
If you've got questions, that'll be great. Send them. But you and I have already talked. I do some articles in the Installer Magazine, Pro Installer Magazine.
Mhm.
We've got one coming up for surfaces. When it comes out, we want to do another podcast about that because you've already seen some of the notes on that. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
And we'll do another podcast. But if you hear questions or I hear questions during that podcast, before we get into that article, maybe we can answer those questions. But January is not too late to do this. That's the other. Do it. You're going to have some time off around the holidays. Do it around the holidays if you can. But if not, get it done when you have downtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yep. I like that. All right, Steve.
Happy
Well,
holidays
thank you again.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Appreciate it. All right, Steve. You take care. Have a good day.